You're listening to the Successors podcast with Kara Oosterhuis on RealAgriculture.com.
Okay, folks, it's time for episode 7 of the Successors podcast. I'm your host, Kara Oosterhuis, and I am so excited to be here with you all, wherever or however you are listening. It's the end of the year, and man, oh man, did winter all of a sudden come here in a hurry. I mean, I say that, of course. It was a wide open fall in my area, at least. It was nice and warm. It really just didn't feel like fall around here, or I guess this is maybe what fall is supposed to feel like, as we don't usually get much of a fall in southern Alberta. So it went from that to, oh my goodness, it's minus 25, the water is froze up, and we're days away from Christmas. It just really seemed to come quickly. It's also my first official winter with small livestock, so I've experienced some cold evening feedings and all the fun that comes along with the cold. But there's still something exciting about going out and doing it. I mean, I really do truly love having something to take care of. So it's fun to be able to do that, and it's awfully rewarding. And I know those of you that have been involved with livestock for decades, you're likely saying, just you wait. But hey, we do it because we really do love it, right? But hey, you guys aren't here to hear me yammer on about stuff you already know. You're here for my next guest. Today's guest is Rachael Melenka. Rachael is a client success manager with 2020 Seed Labs in Alberta, is involved with her family farm, and is a part of a mentorship program in her off time. Hey, Rachael.
Hi, Kara. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. How are things going on your end?
Great. Yep. Winter is definitely here.
Yep. She's definitely a little brisk out.
Once you dip below the minus 25, it gets real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, tell me a bit about where you are based.
I am from east of Edmonton, so that's where my parents currently run a grain operation. We plant wheat, barley, and canola as the main crop types. We also had a few years with cow-calf pairs and custom background in calves, so I did get the childhood experience of processing cattle.
Hey, that's, I grew up just on a crop farm, and I didn't grow up with any livestock at all, and my partner he manages a feedlot, and we have some goats together, and my goodness, processing livestock is something to get used to, I will tell you that much.
Yeah, we were babysitting one time, and he came in from outside, and we're like, oh, what did you learn today? Did you learn all about the cows and everything? He's like, oh, yeah, and I learned the S word and the SH word and the F word, and we're like, okay, we are not giving you back to your parents just yet here. You got to go through a little process of debriefing.
A little cleansing again on what you
yes.
can. Yeah, working livestock will do that to you. So are you still involved with the farm at all?
Yeah, so that family farm is where me and my siblings grew up, and we all are still pretty heavily involved. And actually, we're at the beginning stage of kind of creating what a farm succession plan might look like for our family, which is why I started listening to your podcast. So learning lots.
Hey, well, thank you very much for tuning in. I'm glad you're enjoying the show so far. And I mean, I think this is the cool part about having a podcast like this is that, people that are listening are the same people that we are actually having on the podcast. So thank you very much for listening and for both, I guess, enjoying it yourself. So, anyways, let's talk about that succession process. You guys are obviously in the early stages. What do you have for siblings?
So I'm the oldest, and then I have a younger brother and sister too. So we're all kind of just at the stage in our lives where we're finishing up our secondary education or kind of getting into whatever industry or career that we might see for ourselves. So we are at the stage where we're kind of just putting out feelers as to what everyone's interested in and starting kind of to talk with our parents and some advisors in what the next stages might look like for all of us.
So what is that process looking for you guys? Did your parents come to you and they're like, okay, it's time, we'd like to talk about this? Or is it a conversation that you guys have kind of had to lead?
That's a great question. So my parents have been very, very amazing and open, which I know is not the case in some of the stories that I've been listening to from the podcast. They have had their own farm succession experience that didn't quite go exactly how they wanted it to. So from them, as kind of all in that generation, learning from what their succession and transition story was like, they can kind of take pieces from that. And now they've been really awesome to work with and giving us advice on some ways that we can kind of move forward together as a family.
And, I think we sometimes talk about how, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree and how, some of these cycles get repeated. But I think when it comes to succession, especially, we really look at how our parents did it. And if we didn't like that, we want to change it. Because I know I see that in a lot of operations too. They go, okay, this wasn't quite how I wanted it to go. I'm going to make this different for the next generation.
Yeah. And I really value their experience for sure. I know it is a scary experience and it's definitely a learning curve for everyone. Yeah, having that family dynamic that's just really open and honest is something that I really, really value. And I'm very happy to have in our own family here as we move forward, I guess, with the farm.
Now, you mentioned an advisor. You guys are working with somebody to kind of have these conversations?
Not currently, but that's definitely a goal that I have in mind. And I actually was just part of a risk management workshop. And one of the risks associated with family relations is the dynamic and kind of positioning yourselves maybe with an outside influence or advisor to coach the family along with some of the decisions that they'll be making. So it's definitely something that I want to implement in the future if we find a need for it.
Well, I think advisors bring in the ability to sometimes, like you said, have that outside perspective, and not that things might have gone bad without an advisor, but they bring up questions that you maybe wouldn't have looked at to begin with.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So you currently are, like you said, we're talking a bit about the farm, but you are also with 2020 Seed Labs. Talk a bit about what it's like being involved with the farm and involved with an outside organization.
So I really liked the way I heard someone put it as like a midnight farmer. So I'm really lucky to have the prospect of farming full time in the future, but currently with my position at 2020 Seed Labs, part of my job is working as an agronomist. So that is also very valuable because I'm able to expand my education and continue my education in what's going on in the industry and learn as I continue in my position and bring those education pieces and experience back to the farm too.
Now, you talk about education. What is your formal education actually in?
I went to the University of Alberta and completed a Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Conservation Science. So that is a 2-line title on my degree paper. I actually initially wanted to go into land reclamation, which is why I took that degree. And I really enjoyed my degree and all the classes, of course, minus calculus. But then after working in the egg industry for a few summers and, of course, with an egg background, and then receiving a job offer from 2020 Seed Labs, I really couldn't deny my passion for agriculture, and I'm really glad I didn't. So because of that, and with accepting a position in the egg industry and seeds industry specifically, I'm in a really great place and excited for my future career in agriculture.
Well, and I know the egg industry is happy to have you because you are, you are a wealth of information. So glad you made that move.
Me too.
You also do some work in all the free time it sounds like you have. You do some mentorship work. Do you want to elaborate a bit on what some of the things you do there?
Yeah, so for me, in where I am today, mentorship has played a huge role in that. And I'm sure many other people feel that way as well. So that really stresses the importance of mentorship, and that it plays a role really anywhere, like personal life, professionally, in a career, choosing goals, your secondary education, and having that support along the way. For me, my passion comes from helping people and just having that passion for agriculture, I guess, even with something as simple as Egg for Life in the classrooms or this other mentorship program that I'm part of, which is the Old College mentorship program. So there's a few different opportunities that I've had, working towards continuing to build those mentorship relationships with my mentees.
So how long have you been involved with the Olds College mentorship program?
So that is just recent, a few months, and I think it's actually quite new for the college as well. There is also a few other different types of mentorships that I've experienced previously. So currently, part of this mentorship program with Olds College, it's very structured. So you're assigned a mentee, we schedule the times we want to meet, the goals that we would like to work on, and some success indicators and guidelines on how to reach those goals. But on the other hand, the other mentorship kind of relationships that I've been a part of in the previous years leading up to here, the mentors that I've had, they didn't or still don't know that they are my mentor. So in that sense, they are more of a role model for me, and they're who I feel comfortable and confident in asking for advice and learning from. So, for example, I learned a lot from one of my supervisors I had, where we would go together on sales calls. And from that kind of working scenario, I learned a lot from them on how to build relationships with customers. And they increased my confidence in networking and communicating, which I think really helps me in my position today. So even though I've only been part of a formal program for a few months, I've definitely had other mentorship that is less structured previously.
Well, and you bring up a good point, because I think sometimes people think that mentorship has to look a certain way. It either has to be informal or it has to be formal. And I think it's not so much what it looks like, it's what it can provide back to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the one where I have more role models in the industry, that's maybe a more relaxed type of mentorship that many people may have in their own life and just don't realize it. But it's still equally important to the structured mentorship in reaching goals and shaping your career.
So now you mentioned in some of your mentorship work, you teach people how to reach their goals. What are some of the recommendations you give? I mean, of course, it's very situational, but is there any broad recommendations you give to anyone when it comes to reaching these goals?
Specifically to my mentee, no. But I actually wanted to mention this. There's a quote that I really took home from a webinar that I attended this winter. Her name is Andrea McKenna, and she was actually one of this year's influential women in Canadian agriculture. So she said, mentorship isn't coaching. And what I took away from her discussion is that coaching is like pushing your ideas, your thoughts, experiences onto someone else. For example, you are playing baseball and your coach tells you exactly how to hold the bat in a specific way. That is coaching, because they are telling you specifically what to do, how to do it, which is what we all definitely need in certain aspects of our life. But in mentorship shouldn't be about coaching or even influencing your mentee. As a mentor, this is also what I try to do with my mentee as well. You want to help your mentee form their own goals and interests. And then from your position in the industry and your past work experience, personal life experience, support your mentee along the way into shaping those goals and interests that they have themselves. So that sometimes can look like providing them resources, providing them suggestions for networking opportunities. I've also done some skill development with my mentees. So that's like resume building, mock interviews, and also just being there for them to ask any questions that they might have.
Yeah, and having that space to be able to ask those questions. Like, I mean, I'm somebody that used to always preface all my questions with, like, is this a dumb question? And sorry, I have a dumb question for you, and then and people say, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And I think when you really are in an environment that you believe that, it really helps you be able to go forward.
Yeah, I really agree with that too. The one thing I really like about the mentors in my life, whether they know or don't know that they are my mentor, they are always available for me, actually. So that's another thing I'm working on with my mentee, making sure that they know I'm open to questions by providing my email, saying, text or call me whenever. I'm free for a discussion. And when you schedule a meeting with your mentee or call or a text or a discussion saying, I'll get back to you, make sure you keep it and even be prepared for it, in the sense that you're there to mentor, not coach them. And even though mentorship is usually a volunteer position, or you just have that someone in your life where you're providing advice to, you don't want to make it your second or push it to the wayside. You don't want to make your mentee feel like they're not one of your priorities, which is sometimes hard because in a volunteer, of course, your work and family comes before most of those times. But just to make sure that they are feeling like they're being listened to, and that vice versa, they can always contact you for questions, which is what I really value in the people that I ask for advice and learn from.
Well, absolutely. It's one of those things that sometimes I think it's very hard to reach out. And if you are making the effort to reach out and you're not feeling like you're being received or listened to, that causes issues as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned having a mentee. Is this your first one you've had, or have you worked with a few through different programs?
Yes, Olds College is the program that I've been formally a part of, first one. So first formal mentee to be assigned for me, and it's going really well. That's actually another thing I'd suggest, is that if you're interested in mentorship, like a structured program is really useful because they do provide you the resources on how to go about it and set you up with someone who's also interested in that kind of mentorship as well.
And now, do you need to be in the old specific area, or is this something you can do remotely?
Definitely remotely, yes. That's another thing that I think is really valuable in a mentorship. Like we mentioned, just to be there available for your mentee, and even after the mentorship too, if they have any questions as they go along in the career. That's what I value too in my the mentors that I have. If I have a question along the way about a year later, they always make me feel like I'm not a burden if I call them up and want to have a chat or stay connected that way. So definitely taking advantage of the virtual meetings, discussions, texting and calling, anything like that instead of just in person is really valuable in a mentorship.
So you're somebody who keeps yourself, I think, pretty well informed and pretty well rounded. What are some of your favorite ways to consume information? Like, do you like going to the in-person trade shows, or do you like being online, or like what are your ways you get all that knowledge?
Very interesting. I've never been asked that question before, but just reflecting on that, love the webinars that keep me up to date on the research and agronomy recommendations and important information for continuing education in the industry. That is really valuable. And I actually like doing that over webinars, actually, which I always used to be an in-person person, if that makes sense. But the webinars are actually quite nice because for me, it gives me time to kind of develop a question and then put it in the chat box, leave it sit there. And then if it doesn't get answered, then have the opportunity for it to be asked. But definitely trade shows and in-person meetings are not to be pushed aside, because that's the opportunity where I get lots of feedback from customers or friends, other people in the industry, just in more of that informal conversation, right? You hear something at coffee talk. That's something that this industry, I hope, gets back to, and I can see it getting back to for sure. But yeah, that kind of small talk, you actually sometimes gain the most information and really build those relationships in the industry. I
find sometimes when it comes to story ideas or thoughts, some of the best things you come up with are when you are just having that informal discussion. So I agree with both sides there, because I mean, there's something to be said about sitting in a webinar with your pajama pants on too.
Yes, I also enjoy that.
Okay, any other messages you would like to send to anyone that might be listening when it comes to either starting that succession conversation or working both on farm and in industry, or any of the things we've talked about?
That's great. I think for myself, just getting into the beginning stages of the succession plan, I didn't realize how big of a learning curve it would be. I thought I was quite well educated in the financial sphere, kind of understanding how the loan scheme works for agriculture, and even, arming yourself with information heading into those family meetings. But I would just advise people to just take a step back sometimes. And I know it can definitely be overwhelming, especially when those family relations and dynamics come into play, or financial stress, but we'll all get there eventually. We're working towards the same goal of farming full time or having that family farm, being a part of it. And it's exciting and it's scary all at the same time, but I think that's life as well. So
yeah, no, absolutely. All aspects of life kind of have that. But yeah, I get you, because I know when I talk to my own family or different situations, and they go, I just really want you guys to all be able to get together at Thanksgiving and not want to throw things at each other. So that's a whole dynamic as a part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, Rachel. It was great to have you on today.
Thanks, Kara.
And thanks for all of you that tuned into episode 7 of The Successors. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, maybe you even know someone that you think would make a great guest, get a hold of me. I'm always open to new ideas. You can do so by sending me a message on Twitter at Kara Oosterhuis or via email at KOOSTERHUIS@realagriculture.com. Happy holidays all, stay real, and thanks for listening to The Successors.